It's no secret that there are many heated debates in the field of early childhood, and these heated debates can create what's called cognitive dissonance, which can leave us feeling confused, frustrated, and like we're being personally attacked. One example of a debate that often creates these feelings in the early childhood field is following a scope and sequence versus being a responsive teacher. In today's episode, we're going to tackle another big one, and that's to-do calendar or not to-do calendar. But first, let me ask you a question. Do you think the debate is really about doing calendar versus not doing calendar, or is it more about teaching the standards versus being developmentally appropriate? What if it's not an either-or situation? What if it's really about teaching the standards and being developmentally appropriate? But before you plant your flag firmly on one side or the other, the I will do calendar until the day I die side, or I will never do calendar side, hear me out. I want you to listen to the entire episode before you make any final decisions. Now, I've experienced cognitive dissonance myself. I did calendar in my own pre-K classroom with 4 and 5-year-olds for many years, and I also changed my thinking and teaching practice around calendar time. Cognitive dissonance is the term used to describe the discomfort we as human beings feel when two thoughts or ideas are incompatible to one another. Now, when I first encountered this idea that calendar was not best practice in the early childhood classroom, I was confused because my district had a mandated calendar curriculum for every classroom, pre-K through 5th grade. Now, mandated means I don't have a choice in the matter, right? I had to have my calendar on the wall in my classroom, and I was expected to do it daily. In this particular curriculum taught skills like patterning, counting, and numeral identification through the calendar. And I was frustrated because I didn't know how I was going to teach these skills if I could no longer do calendar. And I also felt like I was being personally attacked, like I was being told that I was a bad teacher because I was doing calendar in my classroom, but yet my school was mandating that I do it. And that, my friends, is cognitive dissonance in a nutshell. So you're probably wondering how I overcame this cognitive dissonance and changed my thinking and teaching practice around calendar time. And well, there are a couple of things that helped me make the shift. The first thing was something that I already knew and I agreed with, which was that 4 and 5-year-olds are not developmentally ready to grasp the concept of time passing, such as yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I first realized this in 1992 when I was a young student teacher, and I had noticed that my 4 and 5-year-old students did not understand this concept at all. So I decided it would be the perfect lesson to do for my observation. That's called foreshadowing. And there I was teaching my little heart out, doing my little lesson all about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And at the very end of the lesson, when I asked questions like, what's tomorrow? I did not get the answers that I expected. Some said, it's my birthday. And others said it was their birthday yesterday. And I'm like, who said anything about birthdays? The rest just looked at me with blank stares, and it was obvious that I had failed to teach them yesterday, today, and tomorrow in my one wonderful lesson, which was a complete disaster. Of course, I now know better because I understand how children learn and develop. Next, I cracked open my state's pre-K guidelines or standards, and I searched for the word calendar. And guess what? It only appeared 2 times in the entire 140-page document. And you know what it said? It said, calendar, 2 to 3 minutes. That's it. As for those concepts about the passage of time, which is really what calendar is all about, by the way, it said this: child shows awareness of the passage of time. And then it said, child uses language to describe concepts associated with the passage of time. And some of the examples they gave for this in action were describes the daily schedule by telling what happens next in the day, associates time language to describe events happening in the day, like in the morning or after snack. Their definition of time is much more child-friendly and realistic than the calendar grid we as adults use in our daily lives, right? Then I noticed something about that mandatory calendar curriculum that I had to use. Remember that? You see, it included a linear calendar, more commonly known as a number line, right? And what I noticed was that this linear calendar was more effective in helping my kids grasp the concept that each day was one more than the last, as opposed to the traditional grid, right? So, for those of you who are watching along, I have a little sample of my linear calendar here on the screen. This is just so that you can see what it looks like in action. I can't show the whole thing on screen because my screen is very zoomed in, so I thought I would just do this demo for you. So on the linear calendar, the numbers, if you look at them, they go from left to right, which is also the direction we read in, right? And on a grid, a calendar grid, they go left to right, and then you have to return sweep and go over again. And then what do you see kids doing when they play teacher calendar? They go from left to right, and then they go down, which is exactly the same thing they do when they're pretending to read. Now, on a linear calendar, each day another number is added, right? And so as you add the number, children can see that it is growing to create one more. So this eliminates that return sweep and having to come back. It's a very easy thing to see with your eyes. Now, if you're watching along, underneath each number, I have houses to represent the days that we're home and little schools to represent the days that we are in the classroom. Now, there's also other pictures you could use, like if you have a program where all the children ride the bus, there's little buses you could put here and so forth. And then there are also like special days that you can count up to. So if I was doing a linear calendar in my classroom, and let's say it was the 23rd, it was Wednesday the 22nd, right? And so we've counted up to the 22nd and I've turned it over. And now I might say, oh, I wonder what's going to happen in 2 more days. Can anyone tell me what they think might happen? And you can see, if you're watching along, there's a picture of a camera there, which means picture day, right? It says picture day. So I might say, let's count to this day here. 1, 2. 2 more days until we're going to get our picture taken, right? And how many more days is it until we stay home? Our home days. Kids know their school days and home days. Let's count. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 more days until we have 2 home days. So you can count forwards. And if this had already occurred, if picture day had already occurred, maybe on the 20th, I might say something like, I remember when we had picture day back on Monday? How many days ago was that, right? So they're counting each day. They're counting on the number line, right? And it grows 1 each day. And so they know when it gets to the end that we start over. So on the screen here, I have November just as an example. But at the end of the month, when we'd finished the number line, I would take it down. I take the whole calendar down and we start again. And that routine starts to tell them that time is marching on. This worked much, much better for my kids. All of that with the linear calendar takes me about 2 minutes maximum to do with the class, but it's very powerful and effective. And those are the kind of interactions that we want our kids to have with anything that we do in the classroom, very powerful and meaningful to them. And you'll notice that there was no need for singing the days of the week song or the months of the year song because they're not developmentally ready for those concepts yet. They're just learning the concepts of the passage of time in very natural ways as they occur in their daily lives. I mean, yes, some children can memorize the days of the week and the months of the year, but does it really help them understand how time passes? Probably not. So as the saying goes, when we know better, we do better. And that is how my thinking around calendar time started to shift. And finally, I read a scholarly article with citations and everything. It was the NACCE article titled Calendar Time for Young Children, Good Intentions Gone Awry. And that was in the Young Child magazine by Beneke, Ostrowski and Katz. And this article really spoke to me because it included some information I already knew, like the benefits of using that number line or linear calendar. And if you are watching along below the video, go into the show notes and there'll be a link to that article for you there. And if you're listening along, go to Pre-K Pages, put calendar in the search box, and then when it pops up, you'll find the page that I have with all my best calendar time tips. And in there, you'll find a link to the article as well. Or you can Google it, NAEYC Young Child Calendar. And if you're looking for even more ideas, my friend Karen at prekinders.com has some good common sense ideas to make calendar time much more meaningful to young children. Again, same thing, link below in the show notes or on my calendar time page at Pre-K Pages. Now, because this isn't my first rodeo, I know that some of you might be wondering, if I don't teach using the calendar, how will they learn? And the answer to this requires a mindset shift. The true purpose of a calendar is to track the passage of time. It is not to teach patterns, numeral identification, colors, shapes, or anything else. I mean, do you think when they built Stonehenge that they were trying to teach colors, shapes, and numerals, or were they tracking the passage of time? Now, if you really want to teach your students how to track the passage of time, you start with what's real and meaningful to them. And then you move them gradually towards that abstract concept. Those abstract concepts of yesterday, today, tomorrow, months, whatever. So how you do that is you start with things like day and night, right? What happens in their daily lives during the day? And what happens in their daily lives at night, right? I actually have a picture schedule for kids to use at home with their parents. And it has things like brushing your teeth, eating breakfast, getting dressed, going to the park, getting ready for bed, all of those things. That is how we teach the passage of time in the beginning. What happens during the day, what happens at night. And again, it's all about what happens in their lives during the day and night, because a lesson about nocturnal animals is not going to teach that concept. And then from there, you move on to a daily picture schedule, like the one we use at school that calls attention to what comes first, next, last. That's the next stage. So on the screen here, I have a sample demo schedule. This is not a real schedule because it's a very short one. But the way that you use a picture schedule to help kids track the passage of time is you talk every day. You review your picture schedule every single day with your class during your, whether you call it morning meeting, circle time, or calendar time. And you say, now it's time for morning meeting. And I have other episodes about how the picture schedule works and what you should do and say and so forth, how you should transition from one activity to the other. This isn't that episode though. So you would say, I wonder what we're going to do next. Oh, that's right. Look, next comes centers, then recess, snack, and then we go home. And so if they're at recess or you're going to recess and they're still in centers, you say, remember, recess comes next. Then we have snack, right? So we're talking about the passage of time all day long, because once you review the schedule with your entire class during your whole group time, you're going to continually reference it throughout the day as you transition from each activity. So your kids in your classroom are learning about the passage of time all day, every day. So showing young children a traditional calendar grid to teach the passage of time isn't as effective because young children learn from the concrete, the real, things they can touch or experience in their daily lives, to the abstract, like 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, and so forth. Now that brings me to another question that I get asked a lot. What if I have to do calendar because my director or principal says so? First, I want you to remember that you, yes, you, are the professional educator. And professional educators advocate for their students. But don't let the word advocate scare you off. I know for some, it feels like you're being asked to march in the streets, but really the word advocate in this sense can be to use your knowledge to inform or change your practice. So what you can do, focus on what you can, not what you can't. You can add a linear calendar otherwise known as a number line, below the traditional calendar grid on your wall and focus on that instead. The calendar is still there, and the number line or linear calendar is just below it. And you can also remember the attention spans of the children that are sitting in front of you and adjust the time that you spend on calendar to no more than 2 to 3 minutes per year of their age. And you can point to the calendar grid each day as more of a casual mention or a symbol to represent your group time, right? So if you call it calendar time, there's a calendar on the wall. That's the visual symbol that that's where we're supposed to gather, right? The bottom line is this. Traditional calendar time with a grid, days of the week, months of the year, takes so much time away from the school day, and even more so if you're only meeting with your class for half days, right? If you only meet with your class 2 or 3 days a week for 3 hours or less, then every single minute is even more precious. Ask any teacher out there, and they would agree that there is never enough time to teach everything that we have to or want to teach. And as professional educators, we must make every single minute in the classroom count by honoring how their young brains learn and grow and not waste any of their valuable time or hours on things that don't really matter. Now, I want to give a disclaimer for those of you that are still listening along or watching along. Everything that I'm talking about here in this episode, all about calendar time, is about children, young children, ages 4 to 5. If you teach 2 to 3-year-olds, calendar is not appropriate at all. Ditch it, don't do it. Do yourself a favor and your kids a favor and go cold turkey right now. Whole group time for 2 and 3-year-olds should be a story and a song. That's it, period, full stop. Anything else is a complete waste of time. All right, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And I get a lot of questions here at Elevating Early Childhood about whether or not you can obtain a certificate for watching or listening to these episodes. And the answer is no, we don't usually get a certificate for listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video for that matter. I'd love to get certificates for watching all those kitty cat videos that I watch on YouTube, but that's not how it works. So the way it works is the students in our Teaching Trailblazers mentorship program, they get certificates of attendance for attending trainings with me and other guest experts within their program. So if you want to know more about that, there is a link in the show notes, or you can just type teachingtrailblazers.com into your browser and learn all about it. So until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin. Onward and upward.